In 18 days, he's going to take the oath of office again. There's been fairly widespread acclaim for how he's handled the transition and support for his policies. Do you think that once the rubber hits the road, if you will, day one, day two, day three, and they start enacting them and the media goes into full media mode and attacking his policies and lying about mass deportations and this and that, that there's going to be a shift? Or do you think that because of the results of the election, the dynamic has changed?
I think the dynamic has changed because the media has no credibility. They really don't. Nobody pays attention to them. We all know that they have consistently and systematically lied about Donald Trump and about his supporters. So whatever they say, most of America, the majority, looks at it and says, who cares what they think? We don't trust them anyway. They've destroyed their credibility. They might have had an influence 8 years ago, maybe some 4 years ago. Today, Sean, I think the media, as we know it, the mainstream media, the big networks and the major papers like the New York Times and the Washington Compost, as I've called it for decades, they no longer matter. And we just don't pay attention to them. So I think Donald Trump's in a position to do some extraordinary things and do it early. And having gone through 3 governor terms and 2 lieutenant governor terms, one thing I learned, sometimes the hard way, if you're going to do something big, do it immediately, because your political capital is never bigger than it is on your first day in office. And every day after that, it begins to dwindle, whether you do anything with it or not. And the people who wait and say, I'm going to hold this off for my 3rd year, my 2nd year, will make a huge mistake, because you need to come out swinging, do big things. And when they're successful, people then will continue to trust you, even though in your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, it is much harder to get things done, because by then there were people you didn't appoint and you made them mad. There were people who didn't get their way with the bill they put forward and they're mad at you. You said some things that hurt some feelings and they're mad at you. So if you're going to do big things, do it immediately.
You mentioned your service as lieutenant governor, as governor. You ran for president twice. Based on how the media landscape has changed, if somebody came to you right now and said, Governor, I'm thinking of running for fill in the blank, governor or president, knowing what you know now and what you've seen, what advice would you give them about how to interact with the media and how to craft an effective media strategy?
Don't worry about them too much. Use your own assets of social media. Go directly to the people. Bypass the mainstream press for the most part. I wouldn't say treat them with contempt, although it's easy to want to do and it's easy to do. But don't cater to them. Don't believe that they're going to carry your message and that if you don't somehow charm them, that you can't be effective, because they just don't have that much credibility. Look at the newspaper readerships. They've collapsed. It's cratered. Very few people read the paper. Look at what's happened to networks, CNN and MSNBC. Their ratings have totally fallen to the basement, and people aren't watching them. And the people who are watching them only to be stroked with what they already believe. Nobody's really paying attention to them and saying, oh, this is where I get information that I can trust. I just think that it's a different world completely. And the media, they've done it to themselves. They have no one to blame but themselves. And as a result, it is a great time to be an elected official, because you can craft your own message, deliver it directly to the people without having to go through the vehicle that is being driven by somebody who hates your guts, and you'll get your message directly to them. And thank God for Elon Musk. I mean, what he's done with now X, I still want to call it Twitter.
It is
but
Twitter.
Turned it into a true free speech platform. And it has far greater influence than the combined newspapers of the Post, the Times, and all the major papers across the country, and the 3 big networks.
Yeah. Do you think that J.D. Vance is the immediate frontrunner for 2028?
Probably so, simply because as vice president, he's going to be closest to the message, closest to the machinery. And if the Trump presidency is going to be as successful as I believe it's going to be, and I really do believe it will be, he's in a very strong position to take the mantle because, as we know, Donald Trump cannot, no matter what, he cannot run again. So
Right.
it's not like that JD is sort of sitting on the sidelines and hoping he can stay there for 8 years. He has to maintain it for 4. He's already demonstrated an extraordinary intellect and calm capacity to deal with the press, the most hostile kind of interviews or debates. He's handled it with an extraordinary level of just, I don't know, a demeanor that is disarming, but nobody can question his brilliance. He really has been a great choice.
I think he impressed a heck of a lot of people. And it was funny how many people, because of the media, initially were turned off by him. And as I would tell people after the debate, after big interviews, would text me and say, "You were right. This guy is substantive. He's smart. He's empathetic. I mean, he really is everything the opposite of what the media tried to portray him to be."
Yeah, he's got all the right tools, and he's the right age. He's a whole new
Yeah.
generation. So I believe if he wants to run, which I'm assuming
Uh,
he probably will, um, he will be the front runner coming out of the gate. Now
right.
there will be others who will go after the opportunity, and somebody may slip up on him, but he's going to be the guy to beat. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And all he has to do is be faithful and loyal to the America First message, to the successes of the Trump administration. And of course, that means that if that's the case, Donald Trump will probably put the oil of anointing on him, and that makes it even more powerful.
All right. I want to talk to you a little bit. Take us behind the scenes. You were one of the first appointees that Donald Trump named, the ambassador to Israel. Is this something that you sought? Is this something that he sought you out for?
I did not seek it. In fact, I had not had a discussion with him about it. I had not asked for it. There were a few people who had said to me, "I hope he names you to be ambassador." And I said, I like my life. I'm living a good life. I'm not looking for a federal job. And I really wasn't.
Right.
And I really thought David Friedman would go back. He is a dear friend of mine. He was a
Yeah.
phenomenal ambassador. And I thought, if Friedman wants to go back, he should, and he would be the best guy. And that's who I'd support. So it really caught me off guard. I was, as I say, sitting at my desk, minding my own business. And all of a sudden, my phone rings. I normally never pick up a call if I don't recognize the number or that I'm on my call list. His number is actually in my directory, but it wasn't his phone. It was a number I did not recognize. But Sean, this is one of those God winks
Right.
where something told me, take this call. Normally I wouldn't have, but there was this voice that take the call. I pushed accept. It was Donald Trump on the line, not a surrogate, not someone in between. It was him. And he said, I want you to be ambassador to Israel. I mean, Donald, you know him very well. You worked for him a long time. He's not a typical Southerner who spends 6 minutes engaging to the conversation, then has the point of conversation, then another 6 minutes disengaging. He's straight to the point, typical New Yorker. So he just says, "Okay, I want you to be ambassador to Israel." He didn't say, "Would you consider, can you talk about this, think about it? I want you to be ambassador to Israel." And honestly, it was an extraordinary moment because it is the only job that he would ask me to do that I absolutely would say yes to. And because I've been going to Israel since 1973. My first trip was at the age of 17. I was a month away from my 18th birthday, 3 months before the Yom Kippur War. And I've been going back ever since. That's almost 52 years of a relationship. I've known Netanyahu very well personally for over 30 years. I've got deep relationships with members of the Knesset and members in the business community in Israel. I've been over 100 times to that country. It's going to be unusual. I'll go and I won't need a tourist map to know how to get around. So it's
Are you going to be the first Christian to ever serve in this capacity?
Certainly the first evangelical Christian. I think maybe Harry Truman had someone who maybe was by his affiliation Protestant. I'm not sure. But
But definitely
typically,
in modern history too.
yeah, typically the ambassador to Israel is Jewish. And I wondered, would the reaction be a little jilted? And it wasn't. I'll tell you, it's been amazing. The reaction in Israel to my nomination has been unbelievably positive. The same in the Jewish community here in the U.S. And I even asked some friends of mine who are Jewish, why are people okay with me being named? And here's what they said, which makes sense. If Trump were to name a Jewish person to this ambassadorship, the immediate response is, well, of course. And they're going to be pro-Israel because they're Jewish. He names an evangelical Christian. And for me, being a very pro-Israel Zionist, there's credibility because they know it's not for my feeling of, okay, I'm Jewish, I've got to support the Jewish state. I do it because I've been going there. I know the country. I've seen what it has become, this extraordinary place of freedom, free speech, democracy, an oasis in an island or rather in a sea of tyranny and totalitarianism. And it's a pretty extraordinary place, and America's relationship is incredibly strategic. So I'm giddy about the prospects of going. And I know it's going to be a challenge. This is not going to be the easiest ambassadorship, and it's not so much about hosting receptions and parties. It really is about how do you deliver the president's message, which led us to the Abraham Accords.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was something for which Donald Trump should have been given a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
That was a major accomplishment. And people, particularly in the press, never would give him the credit that he deserved for having pulled that off. So this could be Abraham Accords 2.0. Where else can this go? And what we've just seen in the last 15 days, the collapse of Syria. There's a total realignment in the Middle East going on right now. And with the Iranians in trouble economically, their inability to fund Hamas, which is collapsing, Hezbollah is on the run. It's a different Middle East than it was even 1 year ago.
So are the Abraham Accords something that you want to pick up the mantle and run with? Or is there a different legacy that you think Trump should pursue?
Well, I think there's, again, and I'm not trying to speak for the president because it's his policy. An ambassador goes and does the president's work, not his own. But Donald Trump has an extraordinary opportunity not only to expand the Abraham Accords to other Gulf state countries, but he also has an incredible opportunity to help bring a level of security to Israel and protect really the Israelis from having these kind of threats on an ongoing basis. That's going to be an extraordinary part of what he's going to be able to do. And I think he will accomplish it. Yeah.
We've always maintained as a country this notion of a two-state solution. Is that the still the answer, or is there another answer that will result in long-term peace?
Once again, I want to be very careful not to try to speak for the president. So I think he understood in the first term that the idea of two states in the same geographical footprint are impractical. And I said before, he's a pragmatist. So no matter what the ideology might be, oh, that would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? Well, it isn't. And by the way, we've had a Palestinian state. When people said, there needs to be a Palestinian state, we've had one. It's called Gaza. That's your Palestinian state. How'd that turn out? Right. So if anybody thinks that you can put this Palestinian state and stick it right next to the Jewish state, in fact, on top of it, sharing zip codes and street signs, and somehow you have two governments all claiming the same piece of land, and one of those governments does not believe the other one even should exist. So this is not realistic. And that's where I think there's an opportunity. Now, are there capacities to bring some level of prosperity to what would be considered the Arab population, who may call themselves Palestinian, but that's a term that, quite frankly, does not represent a government or a history. It's a name that was embraced by Yasser Arafat in 1962, created in order to justify the annihilation of Israel. So, people need to understand the history of what all of this means. There were always people living in the geographical area, Arab descent, and the term Palestinian was not so much a term that was about a ethnicity or a geopolitical group. It really was a geographical term, because prior to 1962, if you used the term Palestinian, you could be referring to Jews as much as you would be referring to Arabs. So that term, Jewish people said, yeah, we're Palestinian. They considered themselves Palestinian. People say, that's not true. I say, go back and rent the movie Exodus that Paul Newman was in, that Otto Preminger directed, 1960 movie. And throughout the movie, Jews are called Palestinians. Why? Because that was the way it was until 62.
I don't want to go out on a limb here, but do you think, I look back to the Iranian hostage crisis. Reagan gets inaugurated, and the Iranians, almost as a last minute screw you to the Carter administration, let the hostages go. Do you think that we're going to see on January 20th the hostages released because they don't want to deal with Donald Trump? They're fearful of him? Or is that pie in the sky?
They better be fearful of him. I thought the most powerful thing that he has said in the entire process of being elected and post-election was when he made it clear, and he said to Hamas, if those hostages aren't released by the time that I'm sworn in, you will have hell to pay. Yeah. That's leadership. And that's the only thing these people understand. These hostages should never have been held this long. And Sean, some of them, they're being held right now, they're American citizens. Joe Biden has put more pressure on Israel.
He doesn't even acknowledge it.
What in the world is this? And Donald Trump said exactly the right thing. He said, let those hostages go or you'll have hell to pay. Here's the difference. Joe Biden has been like Barney Fife with one bullet in his shirt pocket. Donald Trump is Wyatt Earp. And these guys better understand that, he doesn't just wave a gun around. He means business. And I think he wasn't kidding when he says they'll have hell to pay if they don't let the hostages go. And, the expression is, what around and find out. I think they may find out.
I do too. Governor, our time has come to an end. I just want to say, look, I got asked, was I going back to the administration? I said, look, I got young kids. They got to go to college. I've spent a year and a half building a show. You've spent a lot of time since running for president building an a brilliant brand, right? There's a reason that people want to be associated with you, why you've got a very successful show. And I just want to compliment you for you and Mrs. Huckabee, because I know, like, the easy answer is to sit back and to keep doing the show and doing all these partnerships that you have. But you've chosen to get back in. And I think it speaks volumes to your character and to your family's character of service. So thank you for what you're doing, because I have some, not all, but at least a partial understanding of what you're sacrificing for your country by doing this. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Janet and I feel like it is a calling. And, the income is going to take about a 90% hit. But I'm at a point in life where it's time. And I'm excited to serve my country and to serve my president. And I feel like it's going to be an endeavor that I will be thrilled to be able to do.
All right. God bless you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too, Sean. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.